Hey friends, it's Hopsoft again, and this is my follow-up video for the LocalBus library demo. This is actually an agent system that I'm building. Right now, we often think of agents as AI-oriented, and in this case, that's true of this demo that we're going to look at, but this particular agent system doesn't require that these things actually be trained on an LLM or use an underlying LLM or anything like that, even though this particular demo is doing that. What an agent effectively is, though, is it's a callable, which if you remember on LocalBus, to subscribe to a message, you have to have a callable. So an agent in this case is just a callable. It's a class that has a call method defined that receives a message, and then it can do all sorts of work with that particular message. In this case, I've got several AI agents, and we'll kind of talk about what these things do. So let me just kind of walk you through really quickly what this demo is. So this is testing orchestration between agents, and I'm starting with something really, really boring here. I've got something that I want to sell online, and I'm not a particularly savvy marketer and not creative writer or anything like that. So I'm just saying, and I made this description as boring and as just dull as it possibly could be. So I'm selling a desk lamp. The feature is you can put it on your desk, it lights up so you can see stuff. Most likely made of metal, like not even sure of some of the product aspects, right? I just want to sell something online, and here's my description, my very boring description of what that product is. But I can now capitalize on this agent system that also uses LocalBus under the hood, and you can kind of infer, I think, as you see how this thing runs and operates together, like how it may be using LocalBus under the hood. However, this agent system may not get open sourced. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But my first agent is a rewriter. Now, one of the things that I've got in here, if I go in and look at my posts, on my fixtures, I've got posts, and these could be blog posts. It could be an email with like a title or a subject and a body, but essentially these are existing marketing messages inside of my fixtures, or the data seeds effectively that run with the tests. So they all talk about different products. They've got a particular structure, and very marketing oriented, right? So it could be a marketing email. It could be, something like a product page or something like that. And so we have these examples of how to craft a good post. And so over here, this first agent is a rewriter. And what it does is it's going to take the, where did I grab my first post? I think it's down here when we first kicked this thing off. So I craft a message, and then my template. Actually, I was looking for my template. Let me see if I can find my template. Where do I pull that out? Oh, here we go. So that's a fixture. I'm just grabbing one of those posts that we just looked at, and I'm grabbing the body from that particular post, right? So if I'm back here, we're just grabbing the body and saying, okay, there's our reference material. So effectively, what I want to do is I want to restructure this content into my reference material. It should have roughly the same word count and should have the same type of marketing structure as my reference material. And so that's what this agent is responsible for. It is using AI under the hood to make that happen. But essentially, I mean, it doesn't even have to use AI. Like I could have a whole bunch of, explicit code that I wrote myself that does all that stuff for us. But because AI is a thing, I'm using AI here. So this agent takes both that original content, which I call the template. You can see we're responding to call here. I'll explain a little bit about what's happening here when we put together the mission. But think of this section right here as me assembling a team of agents or just callables, whatever, however you want to think of this. I'm assembling like discrete individual chunks of code, and I want to now orchestrate them to all kind of work together. However, none of these things are aware of each other. So my rewriter is my first agent, and it bears the responsibility of looking at the reference content and then looking at this boring description, rewriting that boring description in the basic type of structure that we saw on the reference content, but tailored for my description. So it's going to do that. Then I have a sanitizer. The sanitizer actually takes that content that was rewritten and will kind of clean it up. It's going to remove extraneous punctuation. It's going to get rid of any weird formatting that we get back from the rewriter. It'll get rid of HTML tags and stuff like that, even Markdown. It just kind of strips it all down to essentially the raw content, which is what I'm after in this test. Now, this is a fairly contrived test, but you can start to see how powerful this type of thing starts to become. So the sanitizer is not aware of the rewriter. It just happens to be the next member in my team that I'm structuring here to work together with all of these when they get composed down there on the mission below. So the next one is a recruiter. This one is actually pretty interesting. What this agent does is it actually is going to go and look at the content that came out of that one. So essentially think of this as like a Linux pipe system almost, where we take the result of this one and we're going to pipe it to that one. And then we're going to take the result of that one and pipe it to this one, and so on and so forth. So now we get the content of the sanitizer, we give it to the recruiter. The recruiter is an agent that has the responsibility of analyzing that rewritten and sanitized content, and then it is going to recruit some authors that have a specific voice that might be good candidates for rewriting our marketing message. And just for kicks, let me show you what those look like over here. Oh, not in the test, but under my agents here, I've got authors. And so you can see I've got several authors that may write it. And they're, in many cases, these are popular marketing authors. And it's just driven by the prompts that are kind of instructing it how, like the tone and the structure and kind of like the key ways of communication that each of these authors might have. So those are, and that's a little bit of the secret sauce. So I'm not going to reveal what those prompts and that conversation history look like, but it essentially teaches an AI, hey, here's how you write like this particular author. Right. And so our recruiter on this side, it bears the responsibility of analyzing this content and then selecting a number of authors that it wants to give a shot at rewriting the original rewritten content. So here we just take the boring message, craft it into something that looks more like our template content, even though it's crafted and tailored for this particular message. Then we get the sanitizer, which will clean it up. The recruiter then looks at that content, and based on the content that it sees from that initial rewrite, it will select one or more of these authors to say, hey, maybe this author would do a good job at that. So to facilitate our authors, I create what I call a crew. The unique thing about a crew in this agent system is that a crew can all operate in parallel. The other neat thing about a crew is it can run any agent. So they don't all have to have the exact same behavior. It could be any agent that receives the message payload and can operate on that message payload. So they could be completely disjointed and unrelated as long as they are okay to run in parallel. So then we're going to give it to the crew. The crew is then going to execute. And right now you can see our crew doesn't have any authors inside of it, even though we named it authors. So we have to, when we craft this mission, we'll actually build up our authors into that crew, because we won't know who they're going to be until this process is running. So we go ahead and put a placeholder for our authors, which is a crew. Then when the author's all complete, we give the response from the crew to the editor. The editor then will look at all of the rewritten content and then makes a judgment call and says, based on its set of criteria, I think this author is going to win. And it's the best one. That's the one that you should select. So the editor picks a winner, effectively, out of all of the authors that have made the attempt at the rewrite. And then we come down to the sanitizer, which is just kind of the final cleanup. It's the same object as this sanitizer. Just make sure that we're formatted in a way that is acceptable for us to save or present or something like that. So the next interesting bit inside of this is our mission. A mission in this particular system is a way to now compose that team to do its work. So we just instantiate a mission, and then we've got this with method. The argument to the with method is the agent that's going to execute. Now, notably, a crew itself, even though it's composed of agents, is itself an agent. And so we start here and we just say, okay, we've got a mission with the rewriter. Let's call with this message payload. That's the same type of a message payload that would get pushed up to LocalBus. When it completes, this is going to execute in linear fashion. So when that completes, it's going to take its result and make, well, it doesn't actually, here's where we're actually doing the piping. We actually take the result of this one. However, because that we're going to block and wait on that response, we can actually ask for its result here. And so we get its result there. With the sanitizer, when it finishes, then we give it to the recruiter. The recruiter takes the sanitizer result, and then with the sanitizer result, then we go into the authors, which is our crew. So here we take that, and the recruiter essentially returns us a JSON array of author names that we may want to use. So we take that, and then we build up the crew effectively. So with authors, we have, and I should also note inside of these blocks, when you're inside of the block context itself is the agent. So when we invoke call right here, those call methods are actually executing on the agent that we've passed into the with method here. So with authors, a crew has a team variable, and that team is an array of members of a different team. So those are just going to be new agents. So we take those authors, we instantiate them with one of the entries of the voices or author names that were handed to us by the recruiter. So we go ahead and build that team up, and then we call on that crew and tell that crew to execute. Now that crew will execute in parallel. And when it completes, then we hand it to the editor. The editor takes the values from all of the authors and then calls itself with that particular result, and then we hit what I call the finalizer, which is just our final cleanup of the sanitizer. Then to get the mission to start, so we've composed the mission and it's ready to go, but we haven't actually kicked it off. We kick it off with the start call, and then here we get some put statements in terms of what's going on. Now this is using some LLMs under the hood, namely it's using OpenRouter right now. It could literally be anything, and all of the agents could use different LLMs, or even local LLM if you wanted. Or it could even just be your own custom code, which, just to kind of highlight the interesting thing about this, when I actually built the sanitizer, my initial thought was, well, I'll just write like an HTML sanitizer myself and just have that be the agent. But I was building this with an AI-assisted editor, and I asked the AI assistant to help me build that thing, and it just copied the pattern that I'd already saw with some of the other agents and actually used an AI LLM thing under the hood to do the sanitization, which isn't really what I intended, but I found that really interesting. And it also kind of highlights like where we're going with AI. So then down here, we just print out some of the messages when this thing goes. We kick it off. And this is, again, remember that if you saw the other demo with LocalBus, because this is now backgrounded, we'll actually get here really fast because we're running all of this on the background. Then we're going to wait. We're going to block the main thread and wait for the mission to complete. And then we print out some things. So this just shows us our original template that we started with. Then this shows the user description, which is that really boring description. And then we print the final result right here. And then we just have a benchmark. And I'm doing an assert true. And just for the sake of this demo, I commented out these other assertions. So let's bring this pry in, and hopefully this will actually work. I've been seeing some timeouts with OpenRouter lately, but let's give this a shot and see if this will work for us. Let's kick this thing off. So you can see we got here fast. Now we're just waiting on the mission to run. All right, the rewriter was successful, hitting the sanitizer. Now we're going to the recruiter. He gave us, 5 authors to try this out. Here they come back, and you can see it's only as slow. That whole crew ran in parallel, and it was only as slow as the slowest one, so 7.2 seconds. Now we give it back to the editor. We get the sanitizer call, and we should see our final output here in just a second. We're on the pry, but let's go look at some of these messages that printed out. So remember, this was our template. This is our reference content. It's about a product that's not even remotely related to the lamp that we want to sell, but that's the structure that we kind of want to have at the end of this process. So then This was the description, which is that incredibly boring, just bland description of my product. And then here we are on the final result after it ran through that entire mission, which is pretty interesting, right? Your eyes are being destroyed by cheap office lighting, and it's killing your income too. Pretty compelling. Like, it took my very, very boring description and created a pretty compelling message. I mean, maybe you could consider that maybe a little bit of hallucination, but that's in terms of like crafting pricing for on our behalf. But that can all be tuned with how you're training and how you're actually instructing the AI under the hood that's driving this thing. But again, those agents do not have to be driven with LLMs under the hood. They can be just custom proprietary code as well. So those agents are a way just for you to compose logic within your system. So they can all be little discrete operations, and then you can compose them all into a mission to do something like this. And then one last little bit on this demo is we'll just take the mission itself and tell it to print out as a hash, and we'll awesome print that and take a look, and we can kind of see this thing as it runs through. So here we are on a mission, and we get the rewriter, and this was the response that came back from the rewriter. Then we got the sanitizer, and I don't know if it really cleaned up too much, maybe a little bit in there, but that's just for the sake of demo purposes here. Then we hand it to the recruiter, and you can see the result that the recruiter gave us back. It said those are the best authors that should give this thing a stab. And so we come through here and we get those rewrites from each of those authors. So here's one from Dan Kennedy, which I think that might be the one that won. We'll actually verify that. So we got Dan Kennedy's rewrite, we got Russell Brunson's rewrite, we got Jay Bayer's rewrite, Mitch Joel, and one from Seth Godin. And then the final one, our editor picked this one, which Our Eyes Are Being Destroyed, which I believe was, yep, that was Dan Kennedy. So the one that the editor picked for us was Your Eyes Are Being Destroyed, but then we gave it to the sanitizer, and you can see it actually kind of cleaned it up. It felt like it needed to get rid of this extraneous warning in the front. But yeah, I mean, that's effectively it. And then if we look at the mission result here, and let's just print that out. This is what we finally got from that initial template that we started with. It was for an unrelated product, but the structure is roughly the same. The word count is roughly the same. And we took that boring description about the lamp and turned it into this. Right now we have Luma Pro. It even gives us a product name and gives us all these compelling reasons of why this is a great product. So pretty cool, and I'll just kind of leave it as an exercise for the viewer here to kind of think about how I may have actually capitalized on the LocalBus system that's sitting underneath this to make all of this happen. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll keep an eye peeled. This might open source, it may not. All right, thank you.